The Coalition fleet drifted in silence at the edge of unknown space, far beyond the routes marked on any star map. What was meant to be a short exploration mission had slowly turned into a nightmare. Dozens of ships from different species floated together, their hulls scarred and engines damaged, surrounded by the cold darkness of the void. Hours earlier, an ambush had come without warning. Energy fire had torn through the formation, communication arrays had gone dark, and navigation systems had failed almost at once. The enemy ships vanished as quickly as they appeared, leaving only wreckage and fear behind. Inside the surviving vessels, crews worked non-stop to stabilize what little they had left. Engineers sealed ruptured corridors, medics treated the wounded, and commanders tried again and again to restore long-range communication. Every distress call was sent with hope, and every minute of silence that followed made that hope thinner. The nearest friendly outpost was weeks away at full power, and now most of the fleet could barely move. They were stranded in a region no one truly understood. At first, the leaders believed rescue would come soon. The Coalition was powerful, respected, and well-connected. Surely someone would notice when an entire exploration fleet went silent. But as hours turned into days, doubt crept in. Backup transmitters failed. Emergency beacons showed no confirmation pings. Even automated probes sent toward known space never returned data. It felt as if the void itself was swallowing their signals. Morale began to crack. Some crew members whispered that this region of space was cursed. Others blamed command for approving the mission in the first place. Quiet arguments broke out in mess halls and control rooms. Everyone was thinking the same thing, but few dared to say it out loud. What if no one was coming? What if they had been forgotten? The fleet commander, an experienced officer who had survived 3 wars, studied the tactical data in silence. The ambush had been too clean, too precise. Whoever attacked them knew this space well. That meant the enemy was close, watching and waiting. Yet no further attack came. That made the situation worse. A quick death would have been easier than this slow decay of hope. Life support systems were now a serious concern. Power had to be rationed. Entire sections of ships were shut down to preserve air and heat. Lights were dimmed. Artificial gravity flickered. On one transport ship, families huddled together in emergency shelters, trying to comfort children who did not understand why the stars outside never changed. Some officers remembered old diplomatic meetings where humans had warned about this border region. Humans had claimed it was unstable, dangerous, and not meant to be crossed without heavy protection. At the time, many had dismissed those warnings as exaggeration. Humans were known for caution mixed with paranoia. Now those memories felt heavy and bitter. As another day passed, the fleet officially marked their status as lost. This was a formality, but it carried emotional weight. It meant planning for survival without outside help. Food rations were recalculated. Escape pods were counted, even though everyone knew they would lead nowhere. Command logs were updated, recording events, in case someone someday found the wrecks. The silence of space pressed on every mind. No stars moved, no friendly signals appeared. The fleet was alone. The idea that rescue was not coming settled slowly, like a shadow spreading across every ship. Fear turned into quiet acceptance. The crews did their duties not because they believed in rescue anymore, but because routine was the only thing keeping panic away. In the darkness beyond their hulls, the void remained still, giving no hint of what would come next. The enemy did not attack again. That was the most frightening part. After the ambush, the Coalition fleet expected another wave of destruction at any moment, but nothing happened. Sensors slowly came back online on a few ships, and what they detected made everyone uneasy. Enemy vessels were still there. They were positioned around the damaged fleet at a careful distance, silent and unmoving, like predators watching injured prey. At first, some commanders thought the enemy ships were damaged too. Maybe they were regrouping or waiting for reinforcements. That small hope did not last long. Long-range scans showed the hostile fleet was fully powered, weapons charged, engines ready. They were not weak. They were not afraid. They were simply waiting. Hours passed, then an entire day. No communication attempts came from the enemy. No warnings. No demands for surrender. Nothing. The silence felt intentional. It was as if the attackers wanted the trapped crews to understand how helpless they were. Every minute that went by drained more strength from the coalition ships, while the enemy lost nothing. Inside the fleet, fear grew in a new way. During the ambush, fear had been loud and sharp. Now it was quiet and heavy. Crew members stood at their stations, staring at screens that showed the same unmoving dots of enemy ships. Engineers reported that power reserves were dropping faster than expected. Medics warned that stress levels were causing physical illness among the crews. Sleep became difficult. Night cycles were filled with bad dreams and sudden alarms that turned out to be false. The enemy's patience began to feel cruel. They did not rush to kill. They let the fleet struggle. They let systems fail slowly. They let hope break piece by piece. Some officers believed this was a psychological tactic meant to weaken resistance before the final strike. Others thought the enemy was studying them, learning their habits, counting their resources. On one ship, a junior officer suggested a coordinated breakout attempt. The idea spread quickly, because doing nothing felt worse than dying in battle. But simulations showed the truth. With engines damaged and weapons offline on most vessels, any attempt to run would end in instant destruction. The enemy formation was perfect. Every escape path was covered. The realization sank in that the attackers were in complete control. They did not need to hurry. Time itself was their weapon. Every hour, oxygen levels dropped slightly. Every cycle, food supplies shrank. Every moment, morale fell further. The enemy simply had to wait. Some crews tried to provoke a response. Short-range messages were sent. Signals were flashed. Even warnings and threats were transmitted into the void. There was no reply. The enemy did not acknowledge them at all. This silence felt worse than insults or demands. It made the coalition feel small and powerless. The fleet commander ordered strict discipline. Panic would only make things worse. Duty shifts were enforced. Daily briefings continued, even when there was no new information. It was important to maintain structure, to remind everyone that they were still a fleet, not just broken ships drifting toward death. Yet even the commander felt the pressure. Each time he looked at the tactical display, he saw the same thing. The enemy was not nervous. They were not aggressive. They were patient. That patience suggested confidence born from experience. This was not the first time they had done this. Whispers spread through the crews. Stories about species that hunted by trapping their victims and letting fear do the work. Legends of fleets erased without leaving a trace. No one knew if these stories were true, but in the silence, imagination filled the gaps. As another long day ended, the coalition fleet understood something terrifying. The enemy was not waiting because they were unsure. They were waiting because they could afford to. The trapped ships were already defeated. The only question left was when the enemy would decide it was time to finish what they had started. Time moved slowly inside the trapped fleet, and with every passing hour, desperation grew stronger. With nothing to fight and nowhere to run, minds turned inward. Command rooms that were once full of confidence now felt heavy with silence. Officers stared at star charts they no longer needed, replaying every decision that had brought them here. The question echoed everywhere. Where did we go wrong? Many leaders began to think about the warnings they had ignored. There had been meetings, reports, and quiet suggestions that this region of space was dangerous. Some species had advised caution. Humans, in particular, had spoken clearly about unstable borders and unseen threats. At the time, those warnings had been brushed aside. The coalition had believed its strength was enough. Now that belief felt foolish. In private quarters, commanders recorded personal logs. Some spoke openly, admitting mistakes they would never say aloud to their crews. They wondered if pride had guided their choices more than reason. The idea that their fleet might die here because of arrogance was hard to accept, yet impossible to deny. Among the lower ranks, regret took different forms. Pilots blamed themselves for not reacting faster during the ambush. Engineers blamed themselves for systems that failed too quickly. Medics blamed themselves for not being able to save everyone who was injured. Even those who had done everything right felt guilt, because survival itself began to feel unfair. Supplies became a constant topic of discussion. Food was measured carefully, portions shrinking each cycle. Water recycling units were pushed beyond safe limits. Medical supplies were locked away and only used when absolutely necessary. Every choice became a calculation. and every calculation reminded the crews how little time they might have left. Fear also changed relationships. Some crew members grew quiet and distant, conserving emotional energy the same way they conserved power. Others talked more than ever, sharing stories from home, memories of families, and plans that now felt impossible. Laughter sometimes echoed through the corridors, sudden and strange, as if people were trying to remind themselves they were still alive. Arguments broke out too. In one cargo ship, a fight erupted over ration distribution. Security intervened before it became deadly, but the tension remained. Stress was pushing everyone to their limits. The enemy did not need to fire another shot. The fleet was slowly tearing itself apart. The fleet commander called a closed meeting with senior officers. They spoke honestly, without ceremony. They admitted the truth. No rescue had responded. No breakthrough plan existed. The best they could do was hold together and keep order as long as possible. It was not a speech meant to inspire victory. It was meant to preserve dignity. After the meeting, orders were sent across the fleet to maintain routine. Work shifts, maintenance checks, and training drills continued, even if they served no tactical purpose. Routine gave people something to focus on besides fear. It gave structure to days that otherwise felt endless. Thoughts of humans returned again and again. Some officers remembered laughing at human caution. Others remembered choosing faster routes instead of safer ones. Humans had been called paranoid, slow, overly defensive. Now those traits seemed wise. The regret was sharp because it came too late. As time passed, hope faded into something quieter. It was no longer the belief that someone would arrive to save them. It became the hope of surviving with honor, of protecting crew members until the end, of not giving the enemy the satisfaction of seeing them break. In the cold darkness of space, the fleet waited, carrying regret like a heavy weight. They had time to think, time to remember, and time to understand the cost of ignoring warnings. Whether anyone would ever learn from their mistakes no longer mattered. All that mattered now was enduring what came next. The silence around the fleet was suddenly disturbed by a strange reading on a damaged sensor array. At first, no one paid attention to it. Malfunctions were common now, and false alerts happened every hour. The technician marked it as noise and moved on. But the signal did not disappear. It grew stronger, more defined, and impossible to ignore. Another ship detected it next, then another. The readings did not match anything in the known database. There was no energy spike, no jump signature, no normal sign of a vessel entering space. It was as if something massive was forming out of nothing. Officers exchanged uneasy looks. Unknown did not always mean danger, but in this situation, nothing unknown felt safe. The fleet commander ordered a focused scan, diverting precious power to the sensors. The image that slowly formed on the display made the command deck go silent. Space itself appeared distorted, like a deep shadow bending the stars around it. The darkness was not empty. It had shape. It had weight. Some believed it was a natural phenomenon, a rare space storm or gravitational rupture. Others whispered about experimental weapons or ancient technology. No one could explain it, and that made it terrifying. The enemy fleet reacted as well. For the first time since the ambush, their formation shifted. Ships adjusted positions, weapons turned toward the anomaly, and power levels rose. That reaction alone told the coalition everything. The enemy was concerned. As the distortion grew, the space around it seemed to stretch and twist. Lights flickered across control panels as systems struggled to understand what they were seeing. Then, without sound, the void opened. There was no explosion, no flash, just a smooth tearing of space, like fabric being pulled apart slowly and carefully. From within that darkness, a massive shape began to emerge. It was not fully visible at first, just an outline against the bent starlight. The size readings were unbelievable, larger than any single ship the coalition had ever built, larger than some space stations. Crew members stared in disbelief, unsure if exhaustion had finally broken their minds. The enemy fleet hesitated. Their perfect formation loosened slightly, as if uncertainty had reached them too. That hesitation was noticed immediately. It was the first sign of weakness the coalition had seen since the ambush. As more of the object appeared, details became clear. Hard edges, layered armor, a design that looked practical, heavy, and deliberate. This was no natural event. This was a ship, and it was arriving in a way no one had ever seen before. No communication came from the unknown vessel. No identification signals. No warnings. It simply moved forward, slow and controlled, as if it had all the time in the universe. The distortion behind it slowly closed, leaving the ship fully in normal space, real and impossible at the same time. Across the Coalition fleet, crews held their breath. Some felt fear. Others felt something unfamiliar, a small spark of hope they were afraid to trust. The timing was too perfect to ignore. Whatever this ship was, it had arrived at the moment when all hope was nearly gone. The enemy ships began to reposition again, spreading out, preparing for engagement. Their behavior confirmed what everyone suspected. This newcomer was a threat, a serious one. The fleet commander watched the tactical display closely. A single unknown ship facing an entire hostile fleet should not have changed anything. And yet, everything felt different. The balance had shifted in a way that could not be measured by numbers alone. As the massive vessel completed its emergence, one thought spread silently through the Coalition ships. The void had not been empty after all. Something had been watching. Something had chosen this moment to appear. The ship was now fully visible, and the Coalition fleet could finally see what had emerged from the void. It was massive, larger than anything they had imagined, with thick armored plates layered across its hull like the scales of an ancient beast. Deep marks and scars covered its surface, signs of battles fought long ago. This was not a clean or elegant vessel built for show. It was a warship, built only for survival and combat. Slowly, the unknown ship moved forward, placing itself between the trapped Coalition fleet and the enemy formation. The movement was calm and confident, almost casual. It did not rush or make sudden turns. It simply took its position, as if this was exactly where it was meant to be. That single act sent a powerful message without a single word being spoken. Sensors struggled to scan the ship. Its energy output was enormous, yet tightly controlled. Weapon systems were active, but not fully charged. Shield readings were unlike anything in the Coalition database. This technology was advanced, but not flashy. It felt purposeful, designed by beings who valued function over appearance. The enemy reacted immediately. Their ships shifted formation, weapons locking onto the newcomer. Energy levels spiked across their fleet. They clearly recognized a threat, yet they did not fire. They hesitated. That hesitation was enough to raise heart rates across every Coalition ship. For the first time, the enemy did not look unstoppable. Minutes passed in tense silence. The massive warship held its position, unmoving. Then a communication signal finally reached the Coalition fleet. It was short, simple, and unencrypted. The source identified itself as a human warship on long-range patrol. The word human spread across the fleet like a shockwave. Some officers stared in disbelief. Others felt a wave of relief so strong it left them dizzy. Humans were real. They were here, and they had arrived alone, against impossible odds. The message continued. The human commander acknowledged the presence of hostile forces and declared the area under human protection. There was no threat in the tone, no dramatic speech. It sounded like a statement of fact, calm and firm, as if the outcome was already decided. No demand was made, no negotiation offered. The human ship did not ask for permission. It did not ask if help was needed. It simply acted. The enemy fleet responded with movement, spreading wider, attempting to surround the human vessel. The warship adjusted its position slightly, maintaining its place between the enemy and the damaged convoy. It was clear the humans understood exactly what the enemy was trying to do, and they were not concerned. Inside the Coalition ships, crews watched in silence. Fear and hope mixed together in a way that was hard to describe. They knew one ship should not be able to save them. Yet something about the human warship felt different. It carried a quiet confidence that did not need explanation. The human commander sent one final message, this time directed at the enemy fleet. It was brief. The content was not shared across Coalition channels, but the effect was immediate. Enemy ships powered up weapons fully, and the tension reached a breaking point. Still, the human warship did not move aggressively. It waited. That patience felt familiar now, but this time it belonged to someone else. The enemy had used time as a weapon. Now humans were using it as a warning. Across the Coalition fleet, systems remained powered down, weapons offline, crews watching history unfold in silence. Whatever happened next would decide their fate. and for the first time since the ambush, that fate was no longer completely in enemy hands. The first shot did not come from the human warship. It came from the enemy fleet. A single energy bolt flashed through space, aimed directly at the massive human vessel. For a brief moment, everyone held their breath. Then the shot struck the human shields and vanished without effect. The shields did not flare brightly or weaken. They absorbed the attack as if it was nothing. The enemy fired again, this time with multiple ships joining in. Beams and projectiles crossed the darkness, lighting up the void. The human warship remained still, taking the hits without moving. It was as if the attacks were being measured, studied. Sensors across the coalition fleet showed no drop in shield strength, no panic, no reaction. Then the human ship responded. There was no dramatic warning, no long charge-up. One section of the warship's hull shifted slightly, and space itself seemed to fold around the weapon fire. Precise beams shot out, striking 3 enemy ships almost at once. Their shields collapsed instantly. Hulls were cut cleanly, and the ships went dark, drifting apart in silence. The response was calm, controlled, and terrifying. The enemy fleet reacted in confusion. Some ships pulled back. Others rushed forward, firing wildly. It did not matter. The human warship moved now, not fast but with purpose. Each movement placed it in the perfect position to fire again. Every shot counted. No energy was wasted. One by one, enemy ships were disabled or destroyed. Some exploded. Others were left powerless, drifting without life. The human weapons did not chase fleeing ships. They targeted only those that posed a threat. It was not anger driving the attack. It was decision. Inside the coalition fleet, crews watched in shock. They had seen powerful weapons before, but nothing like this. The human ship was not overwhelming the enemy with numbers or chaos. It was ending the fight with precision. This was not a display of strength. It was the removal of a problem. Enemy commanders tried to reorganize, but every attempt failed. Communication between their ships broke down. Formations collapsed. The patience they had used as a weapon against the coalition now turned against them. They had waited too long. The human warship pressed forward, still positioned between the enemy and the convoy. It never turned its back on the coalition fleet. Even while firing, it protected them. That detail did not go unnoticed. As the battle continued, it became clear that the enemy was losing more than ships. They were losing confidence. Their attacks became desperate and uncoordinated. Some ships attempted to retreat into deeper space. The human weapons allowed them to go. Escape was permitted. Pursuit was unnecessary. Within minutes, the battlefield changed completely. Where an entire hostile fleet had once waited in perfect control, now there was wreckage and silence. A few damaged enemy vessels drifted away, powerless and broken. Then, the firing stopped. The human warship powered down its main weapons and returned to a steady position. No victory message was broadcast. No celebration followed. The battle was treated as a task completed. Across the coalition fleet, a strange quiet settled in. It was not fear this time. It was disbelief. They were alive. The enemy was gone. The nightmare that had crushed them for days had ended in moments. Medics, engineers, and officers slowly returned to their duties, hands shaking, minds struggling to catch up. The human ship remained where it was, silent and steady, like a wall that could not be broken. The coalition understood something important in that moment. Humans did not fight to show power. They fought to end danger completely. And once they decided to act, nothing stood in their way. After the battle ended, the human warship remained in position, silent and watchful. Wreckage drifted slowly through space, the remains of ships that only hours ago had controlled the fate of the coalition fleet. Damage reports began flowing across the surviving vessels, but this time the tone was different. Crews spoke with steady voices. Panic was gone. Survival was now certain. A communication channel opened from the human ship, this time addressed directly to the coalition command. The signal was clear and simple. The human commander introduced himself without titles or pride. His voice was calm, almost ordinary, as if the destruction that had just taken place was routine. He explained that the warship had not been sent as a rescue mission. There had been no distress signal received, no emergency call answered. The ship was on long-range patrol, operating far beyond areas most species considered important. Humans watched these borders quietly, without claiming them, without announcing their presence. This information surprised the coalition leaders more than the battle itself. They had assumed humans only defended their own systems. They had believed human warnings were defensive excuses meant to limit exploration by others. Now they realized those warnings came from experience, not fear. The commander continued, explaining that human patrols existed to prevent exactly what had just happened. There were regions of space where certain threats emerged repeatedly. Humans did not negotiate with those threats. They studied them, tracked them, and ended them when necessary. This was not aggression. It was protection. Some coalition officers asked why humans never made these patrols public. The answer was simple. Humans did not want praise. They did not want authority over others. They wanted stability. If watching quietly kept the galaxy safer, then that was enough. The truth settled heavily among the coalition leaders. They had misjudged humanity completely. What they saw as isolation was discipline. What they saw as paranoia was preparation. Humans did not wait for help to be requested. They acted when lines were crossed. The human commander then asked about the condition of the convoy. Damage assessments were exchanged. The human ship offered technical assistance, energy support, and escort routes back to safe space. There was no demand for payment or political favor. Help was given as a matter of principle. Crews across the fleet listened in silence. Some felt shame. Others felt gratitude so strong it was painful. They remembered dismissive words spoken in council chambers, jokes made about human caution. Those memories now burned. The human commander shared one final detail. The enemy fleet had been tracked for a long time. Their pattern was familiar. They waited for isolated targets, struck without warning, and used fear to finish what weapons started. Humans had ended similar threats before. This one would not return. As the communication ended, the meaning became clear. The coalition had not been saved by luck. They had been saved by someone who was already watching. The human warship moved slightly, preparing to escort the damaged fleet. Its presence felt reassuring, like gravity restoring balance. The coalition ships followed, their systems slowly coming back to life under human guidance. In that quiet moment, understanding replaced fear. Humanity was not reckless. Humanity was not weak. They were guardians who stood in the dark so others could travel safely without ever knowing the danger that had been removed. The galaxy felt larger and safer all at once, and the coalition would never look at human borders the same way again. The convoy moved slowly, escorted by the massive human warship through the black emptiness of space. The damaged ships creaked and groaned under their own weight, but for the first time in days, no alarms warned of incoming attacks. Crews peered out at the stars with eyes that had long forgotten hope, now blinking in disbelief. The sense of danger had passed, replaced by cautious relief, and every crew member felt it deep in their bones. The humans led them not with forceful orders, but with quiet, precise guidance, showing the safest routes and helping stabilize failing systems. Communication between the human warship and the coalition fleet remained minimal, efficient, and clear. No unnecessary chatter, no ego-driven commands. The humans treated the survivors like equals, yet the presence of their massive vessel was a constant reminder of the power that could crush any threat in seconds. The coalition realized that this was not just a rescue. It was a lesson in what humans considered strength, responsibility, and honor. The galaxy had underestimated humanity, and now the consequences of that misjudgment were clear. As they traveled, stories spread among the crews about what had just happened. Survivors whispered of the warship's calm precision, of the way it had neutralized the enemy without panic or wasted energy, and of the quiet authority it carried. Fear had once ruled their hearts, but now it was replaced by awe. They remembered their earlier doubts about humans, the dismissive remarks about caution and discipline, and every officer felt the sting of regret. Lessons that had been ignored for years now became painfully obvious. Humans did not fight recklessly. They prepared, observed, and acted only when it was necessary to secure the greater good. The convoy encountered no further resistance as it moved through the sector. Even small patrol drones of the enemy species were either destroyed or had retreated, avoiding confrontation with the humans. Every passing hour reinforced the realization that the humans' presence was decisive. Where countless fleets might have been lost in weeks of struggle, a single human warship had ended the threat in a matter of hours. The efficiency, the calm, and the finality of their actions left a mark on every observer. The idea of help had changed. It was no longer about backup arriving after the worst had happened. It was about someone watching, waiting, and striking at exactly the right moment. The damaged ships received assistance in ways they had not anticipated. Power systems were temporarily linked to the human vessel, stabilizing failing engines and lights. Communications that had been dead for days flickered back to life, allowing crews to speak with one another for the first time since the ambush. Medical teams aboard the human ship offered guidance and supplies, helping care for the injured. It was not charity. It was duty. The humans acted because it was the right thing to do, not because of reward or recognition. As the convoy approached safer regions of space, the coalition leaders held quiet meetings aboard their own ships. They discussed what had occurred, analyzing every detail. The conclusion was unanimous and humbling. Humanity's reputation had been undervalued, and their understanding of interstellar security had been ignored at a cost that could have been fatal. They began planning how to revise their own strategies, taking human principles into account, knowing that future encounters would demand respect and caution. Crew members aboard the convoy spent long hours staring out at the stars, reflecting on the fragility of life and the thin line between survival and extinction. They understood that what they had experienced was not just a rescue, but a turning point in interstellar history. The humans had demonstrated that power was not just about numbers or weapons, but about intelligence, patience, and decisive action. They had changed perceptions, and those perceptions would ripple across the galaxy. By the time the convoy reached secure space, the warship began to drift away, returning to its patrol routes. It left behind a fleet forever altered, not only in structure and repairs, but in understanding and respect. The coalition had witnessed something extraordinary, something that would shape diplomacy, defense, and strategy for generations. Humanity was no longer an underestimated force. It was a guardian whose presence could redefine survival itself. The stars ahead looked different, larger, and safer, because somewhere in the void, humans were always watching, always ready, and always capable.